What I like talking about is that screw-on, bolt-on drill bit. It's just 3.5 seconds to put my leg on.
Like I said, it's like taking a drill bit out of the drill. That simple.
Oh, cool.
So one of the unique aspects of this technology is the fact that you have an implant system where part of the implant system is inside the body and another part of the implant system is actually outside of the body. And that allows us to directly connect a prosthetic limb to the veteran's remaining skeletal structure.
Hello and welcome to New Horizons in Health, bringing veterans healthcare into the future. I'm your host, Dr. Sharif Elnahal. I have the honor of serving veterans, caregivers, families, and survivors as Undersecretary for Health at the VA. And in this podcast series, we're discussing cutting-edge research and treatments happening right here at VA for the benefit of veterans across the country. And in this episode, we're going to discuss something really exciting called osseo-integrated prosthetics. And we'll explain what that is in a moment. We have two veterans that I'm talking to today who've benefited from this groundbreaking new technology to restore function and really make veterans' lives better who require amputations, particularly above-the-knee amputations. We also have an incredible physician leader who has done this work in Fayetteville, North Carolina for many years and is a thought leader in the field. So I'm really excited to talk to Marine and Army National Guard veteran Ed Salo, who's with me here in the studio today, received one of the first surgeries of this kind nearly 10 years ago. And also we have on video Navy veteran Joe Schutte, who received the surgery just last fall. With him, Dr. Joe Webster, physical medicine and rehabilitation physician at the Fayetteville VA and National Medical Director of VA's Amputation System of Care. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining New Horizons for this important conversation. I'd like to get started just by asking a little bit about your service. So Joe, can you tell us about that and how you continue to serve today?
Well, I joined in 1983 into the Navy. I served 20 years as an aircraft structural mechanic. Been all over the world, retired in 2003. Yeah, I had a really good time. I would do it all over again. Spent 20 years and enjoyed it.
Terrific. And tell us about your experience that brought you ultimately under Dr. Webster's care.
I was working as a contractor on Marine Corps Air Station, New River. And I was riding my motorcycle one day and I got run off the road and a road sign sliced my leg off as I exited the road, sliced it off like a chicken leg being separated from a chicken thigh. And so I went into the standard prosthesis for 10 years, but the way my limb had healed, it was almost flared at the end. So I had no soft tissue that I was stepping on when I was wearing the socket. So every step was very painful. And I was using the VA for my prosthetics. And when the FDA approved my particular surgery, I went to Dr. Webster and asked him, could I go ahead and receive this? And that's how we got on this road over a year ago.
Great. Ed, let's turn to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your service and also what brought you to VA for your care?
Sure. I was in the Marine Corps for about 12 years, active duty. After the Marine Corps, in 2000, I joined the North Carolina Army National Guard. It was an infantry battalion and deployed to Iraq with them in 2004. While I was in Iraq, as the president said, I gave my leg to Iraq. And then what was really great about the VA, my first introduction, while I was still an inpatient, active duty soldier lying in the old Army Walter Reed Medical Center, my bedside phone rang, and it was a medical case manager, Susan Watkins, from the Durham VA Medical Center. She'd read our story in the newspaper and started hitting the phone tree. And she only said that she introduced herself and only said to me, whenever you leave the Army, I'm going to be your case manager. Just know I'm here waiting. And let me tell you what, you want a warm fuzzy and a comfort feeling about dealing with the VA, that's one way to do it. So that was almost 20 years ago, and lived with a traditional socket and prosthesis up until almost 10 years ago. And I got wind of a research study out of Utah, the Salt Lake City VA. Knew the right people at the time, and they connected me with the team. And I was what I call now, blessed enough to be human subject 001 in the VA's study for this osseointegrated prosthesis. And I've gotten to meet the great people involved, like Dr. Webster and such. So it's just been great.
How did you convince yourself to be the first veteran who would try this technology? It's really courageous of you.
I hear that from people. In fact, the psychologist on the research team bluntly asked me before anybody agreed to it. She said, why do you want to do this to yourself? And if you've ever lived with a socket, plus or minus 10 pounds of body weight, living in the heat and humidity of North Carolina, I ran the Army 10-miler in a socket. But that's what I heard. I was incredible. But I wanted to do a marathon, and skin issues with the socket just weren't working. And I was old enough. I was in my 40s, and if it went bad, I had friends that would teach me how to live with whatever the results of that were. It really was a no-brainer.
Wow. You're also helping fellow veterans in the process by beginning what ended up being a really successful study. Dr. Webster, you lead what we call our amputation system of care. Can you speak a little bit about the program more generally, and then on VA's journey specifically with osseo-integrated prosthetics up to this point?
Sure. So the VA's amputation system of care is a national healthcare delivery system for our veterans with amputations. And this program is embedded within the larger VA healthcare system. And the main mission of this program is really to enhance the care and services that we provide to our veterans with limb amputations. And the program has been in place since around 2008 and has continued to kind of grow and evolve over that time period. And with this technology in particular, so this technology was actually first developed and introduced into persons with amputations by Dr. Ricard Brannemark in Sweden. So it was actually developed outside of the United States initially, but the VA has actually been involved with research in this area for close to 20 years now. And a lot of that research was initiated by Dr. Roy Blaybaum, who was a VA research career scientist at the Salt Lake City VA. And Dr. Blaybaum and his team really developed a lot of the basic research behind this technology, and were able to advance that basic technology to be able to offer this implant system to veterans like Ed, who was, again, the first veteran who underwent the surgery in Salt Lake City as part of that initial FDA early feasibility study. Since that time, as Joe mentioned, once the OPRA implant system, which is an implant system that was designed by Dr. Ricard Brannemark in Sweden, once that technology became FDA approved, then the VA was able to develop a clinical program to be able to offer this technology through our clinical programs and as a covered medical benefit for qualified veterans. And again, Mr. Schutte was very fortunate to be able to take advantage of that program that we offered through the VA to be able to get this technology.
Can you describe a little bit, as much as you can in layman's terms, so that I can understand it, how the technology works and what makes it different from the socket that Ed was describing?
Yeah, so again, both Ed and Joe have different implant systems systems, and there are some differences between the two systems, but there's also a fair number of similarities. So both of these implant systems require two surgical procedures that are performed either like weeks or months apart. And then once that implant surgery is completed, veterans have to undergo quite a bit of therapy and rehabilitation to be able to use this technology and to be able to walk and perform their normal daily activities. So one of the unique aspects of this technology is the fact that now you have an implant system where part of the implant system is inside the body, and another part of the implant system is actually outside of the body, and that allows us to directly connect a prosthetic limb to the veteran's remaining skeletal structure. And so that's the way that it really differs from the traditional socket technology that most people have used historically in the past.
So it sounds like you're essentially extending the remnants of the bone that remains in the veteran and coming out of the skin to essentially complete the rest of the prosthesis. Is that an accurate way of describing it?
That's correct. So this implant system serves as that connection point between the person's remaining skeleton and that prosthetic limb, so that now you have a direct skeletal attachment of the prosthetic limb.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Joe, let's go back to you. You received surgery about 8 years after Ed. So we hear that the rehab process looked a little bit different for you. Can you talk about how you engaged in rehab and worked with this new tech?
Yeah, certainly. So a year ago, back in April of 2023, I had my first surgery, which installed the threaded system that the abutment that sticks out of my leg screws into. And then the second surgery went ahead and cleaned up a lot of that and tightened up the abutment, or as I call the bolt, because it looks like a bolt sticking out of my skin. And then the rehab part of it was in October of 2023 is when I was able to start putting, August, able to start putting my weight on the prosthetic or on my leg. And I will say it was one of the most painful things I endured. It wasn't comfortable, but I'm glad I went through it. It was a long process. The 2 week of what they call boot camp, which is rehab that they do at the Richmond VA, was very difficult as well. And part of that reason was over the 10 years that I was walking with a standard prosthesis, I had lost bone density in my femur. And so, there's 6 or 8 inches installed at the bottom of my femur is that bolt. And so it put a lot of pressure in that area. And so boot camp was extremely difficult. But there again, I'm still glad I pushed through it and continued on. Now today I'm not walking. I am walking 14 months later after the initial surgery without any assisted cane or walker or any of that. Still working on my balance a little bit because I'm back to being connected to my skeleton, which was different than being connected on the outside of my body. But it's a good thing. Each day I notice a little bit of improvement in everything.
Love to hear it. And, you went through definitely a tough time with rehab, but it sounds like you got through it with excellent function, and that's really a terrific thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Good. Can you tell us a little?
If I could add
please.
one more thing.
Of course.
The way my prosthetic is in the connection, it's more like a tooth implant, very similar to a tooth implant. They put the peg in my bone, the anchor in my bone, and then I just connect my leg like putting a drill bit into a drill. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. Ed, tell us a little bit about your trial and what your rehab looked like after you got it.
Sure. There were probably more similarities than there were differences, but the differences, as you alluded to, were we didn't know what we didn't know. The study I joined was all about the integrating of the device into my bone and the possible infections that might happen. When it came to rehab, that part of the study was really just standard of care and was good. I don't want to say just standard of care. It's a standard for a reason. But the building the muscles, as Joe alluded to, the bone mineral density was an issue, and we had to grow that back. I was an infantryman walking around talking about Wolff's Law of Bone Growth. Google it if you don't know what that is, all you listeners. And but also my hip and the surrounding muscles. Apparently they'd atrophied a bit riding on top of a socket. So I had some gym work to do. The rehab was pretty standard, I guess, in that account. But what I like talking about is that screw-on, bolt-on drill bit thing Joe mentioned. It's just 3.5 seconds to put my leg on, vice the old methods. And one thing too is, well, two. One, I can wear my leg in a shower now. My socket there's no socket to fill with water. So I took the shower chair out of the shower, and my wife appreciated that. Life's just that much easier without a socket. And I'm not tearing up clothes.
How long would it take to put on your leg when you had the socket?
Well, there's two parts there, right? Putting on my leg, it took somewhere around a minute or more, but that was one time a day. Yeah. I'd put it on in the morning, and if I took it off at any time in the day, it was a pretty unreasonable ask of my body and skin to put it back on at any point again in the day. If my wife and I had to make the plans for dinner that night, I had to keep my leg on. Otherwise, I might burn a blister if I had to put it back on again after taking it off.
Joe, tell us about your experience before and after. How much has this impacted your daily life?
Well, when I first lost my leg, I was a single father at the time, and my daughter was getting ready to start high school, and she is very active in sports. So 3 months after I had lost my leg, I was on my prosthetic, and my daughter asked me, will you walk me out on the football field for homecoming? I said, sure. And so 3 months after I lost my leg, I was walking my daughter onto the football field. But over the years of not being as active and not being able to be as active as I was with my human leg, my weight changed. So adjustments, new sockets. In 10 years, I probably had 15 sockets because my weight fluctuated that much. I put on a lot of weight at one point. I had to lose over 100 pounds just to get this surgery done. But this was and is a life changer. I could take my leg off right now and show you mine, like Eddie showed you his, and I bet you I'm quicker than Ed. But it's life changing. It really is. It's a game changer. I actually went swimming in the Atlantic Ocean for the first time in 11 years this past summer, and I went twice. I couldn't do that with a standard socket, and that was a great feeling.
Love to hear it. Dr. Webster, tell us now that we're a little bit down and more experienced with this technology, what the typical experience looks like on average for veterans who get osseointegration, recovery time, functionality. Can you give us a sense of that?
It really does vary depending on the implant system that's used. And, even though this technology has advanced and evolved over time, the recovery and the rehabilitation is still very extensive. So with the newer implant systems, we are hoping that people will be able to start weight bearing sooner and faster with these implant systems, more like you think about like a total hip replacement where you're up walking, the first day after surgery and beginning that process more rapidly But right now, again, the rehabilitation and therapy is very extensive and takes a period of time, not only for the bone and the implant to heal together so that it remains safe and stable, long term, but also, as and Joe have alluded to, one of the aspects of this recovery is all the surrounding muscles and surrounding tissues have to redevelop, and the veterans actually have to kind of
are learning a new job. They're not doing the same job that they did before. So it is a difficult process. And I'm in the gym every day still working on my legs.
Yeah. Well, we lost you guys for a little bit there with this because of the signal, but it sounds like the work involved in rehabilitating and getting to a level of more normal function is pretty extensive. But once you've gotten there, the benefits and the rewards, as both Ed and Joe have been describing, are pretty tremendous. So, want to get a sense, Dr. Webster, of the future on this. You're doing really important research. Tell us, how many sites we're doing this in terms of offering the osseointegration technology for vets after an amputation, and then the future here on what you're investigating to make this even better.
Sure. So again, with the OPRA implant system, which is the system that's currently FDA approved, for that system, we have 2 VA locations that are actually offering the surgery to be able to place this implant system. And then we've also developed, many of our teams around the country are able to provide the ongoing care and rehabilitation and prosthetic services after the surgical procedure is completed. So we've kind of developed that into a nationwide program at this point. So also with the VA, from the research standpoint, the VA is really interested in being able to offer this technology to a broader population of veterans for the future. Right now, this technology is only available for very select individuals with amputations, but we're hoping to broaden that for the future. And that's one of the reasons that the VA is preparing to launch a new research project regarding this osseointegration technology and the implant system that Ed has in place, the POP implant system. That's going to be a nationwide multi-center research study, which is going to be investigating further the safety and the effectiveness of these implants, again, and being able to offer this technology to a broader population of veterans. So, with the osseointegration technology, it really solves a really important aspect of our rehabilitation, and that's the ability to directly connect the veteran to their prosthesis. But once the veteran has that secure connection between themselves and the prosthesis, the other critical aspects are really knowing how to control that prosthesis and also how the prosthesis communicates with the person. And there's a lot of advances in other technologies to be able to provide enhanced sensory feedback from the prosthesis and better ways to communicate between the prosthesis and the person through using technologies such as brain-computer interfaces. And so all that technology is going to be coming in the future to continue to enhance the care that we provide and improve our outcomes for our veterans with amputations.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And, to both of you, Ed and Joe, we've got world-class experts like Dr. Webster in the VA for a reason. We think veterans deserve the very best and most advanced technology. And there aren't more deserving people who've earned this care than both of you. And so I'll ask you both one last question here, and we'll come back to you, Ed, first. What message do you want to send to veterans, especially veterans who've had to go through an amputation and may be interested in participating in a trial or getting this therapy? What message do you have for them after all things considered with this?
So 10 years of living like this now, as Joe alluded to, I'm taking walks on the beach with my wife. I've got 4 grandkids I can keep up with right now. I'm a certified rescue scuba diver. Couldn't do that with a socket. So my message to my fellow amputee veterans is talk with your doctor. Have them figure out how to get you connected to more information to learn every detail you need to learn about this technology. It's life enhancing if it can be life enhancing. That's my message.
Incredible. Thanks for that message. Joe, over to you. Same question.
pretty much the same thing Ed just said, except if you're having difficulties with your standard socket and you don't think there's any hope or any way to get away from that pain, I would highly recommend talking to your VA rep about getting this surgery done. And I believe the sooner a veteran would get this implant done, the better off and quicker that veteran is going to recover, because he's not going to have the muscle loss that I had after 10 years of wearing a standard socket. He won't have to build up as much as of what he lost. So I encourage the veterans that have lost a limb to look into this, absolutely, and try to qualify for the implants.
Well, terrific. Joe, Ed, Dr. Webster, thank you so much for joining me and spreading this message to your fellow vets and to the entire medical community on what we're trying to do here for veterans. Restoring your quality of life is something that is an obligation of this country, and to be part of a team with folks like Dr. Webster trying to do that is just, my life's professional honor. So thank you again for joining for this conversation. Think about the future with this. Dr. Webster mentioned computer-brain interfaces, right? So we will never stop looking at what is possible to replicate what it's really like to have a leg again. And that frontier is never ending for us. So just know that. And your message to veterans across the country is really meaningful on this. It's why we do these episodes and these podcasts. So thank you again for joining, and thanks everybody for watching and listening. Take care.
If you'd like a demonstration of the Oprah system, I can show you right now.
Yeah, you want to show me? Let's do it.
Sure.
Like I said, it's like taking a drill bit out of the drill. I mean, that simple.
Oh, cool.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. There's the bolt.
Brilliant.
And then it's just the opposite. Open up the drill chuck, basically. And you're gonna be a pain in the butt, aren't you? With the standard socket, you always gotta worry about adjusting to make sure you're lined up and straight.
Yeah,
With this, it's always lined up and straight.
that's right. Incredible.
Pretty good. It is incredible, and I followed Ed through his recovery on Facebook. And I was just amazed that he was out in Yosemite hiking as soon as he was. It blew my mind.
It blew my mind.
Love it.
I bet.
Joe, we're going to send you one of my coins. We'll send it to Dr. Webster, so when you see him next, he'll get it. And you'll get
All right.
one too, Dr. Webster. Thank you so much for joining.
I'd appreciate
Really
that. Thank you.
Doc,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
so much.
Appreciate you.
Thanks again, guys. Awesome stuff.
Thanks.